Ever since the first one came out in 2002, I've been a fan of the Ice Age series, and there's been a lot of video adaptations over the years, including the new one, Scrat'S Nutty Adventure. But is this one truly a nut that you need to crack, or should this one just be frozen and forgotten to history? Ice Age Scrat'S Nutty Adventure is a 3D action platformer set in the Ice Age universe, though not directly related to any of the Ice Age films or even the upcoming Ice Age television show. In the game, you're taking the role of everybody's favorite saber-toothed squirrel, Scrat, and just like always, Scrat's trying to get a hold of some nuts. His most prized possession ends up getting taken away, and in order to get it back, he's going to need to hunt down 4 crystal nuts and bring them back to the ancient Scratazon temple from which the game begins. The gameplay would feel right at home on the PlayStation 2. Platforming and running around as Scrat isn't the greatest, as Scrat controls a little bit heavy. The platforming, especially once you get the double jump, really ends up opening up a bit and becomes a bit more enjoyable, though there are still times where the camera fights against you, as well as judging exactly where you're going to be landing can be a little bit troublesome. But when you combine the double jump and the flying attack for a nice little floating maneuver, you can actually cover a pretty good amount of distance using Scrat's jumping ability that makes the game actually a bit of fun to platform through. Unfortunately though, the other part of the game, the combat, leaves a bit to be desired. It's just straight up button mashing and even more basic than the recent Monkey King Hero Is Back that I played last week. It's just the one button that you'll be mashing to do your attacks with Scrat, and outside the boss encounters, you can pretty much skip every enemy encounter by just running past the enemy. Thankfully, they don't put up any kind of artificial barriers to force you into fights, which I actually like, but it just makes all of the enemies you deal with in the game just seem a bit useless. I did have a few issues with the hit detection of some enemies and bosses. It felt like they were able to hit a bit larger area than they should have, as well as the camera fought me on a few occasions, sometimes getting in way too close when there was walls involved, making some encounters much more difficult than they needed to be, but thankfully there's checkpoints even during the course of boss fights, so honestly the game is a breeze. In each one of the areas you get to explore, there's a lot of little collectibles to keep an eye out for. There's these gems that you're constantly collecting that can upgrade your health, as well as these statues and things that you can keep an eye out for. The game thankfully has fast travel options, and you gain some new abilities during the course of the game, the best being the double jump, and you'll be able to go back to previous explored areas with the abilities to find some of those secrets. Unfortunately, if you're a fan of the Ice Age franchise and love the other characters other than Scrat, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. There's not really any story dialogue or anything with the other characters. You don't even really get to see them other than maybe in the background in some locations, and I only saw a few through the course of the game. Thankfully though, there are a few little funny cutscenes and the like, using pretty typical Scrat setup humor with the nuts and the like, which I did giggle a little bit at, but I definitely wanted more. My favorite parts of the game are after collecting the crystal nuts, you have these kind of transition parts, one of which you're falling and another one you're doing some surfing on ice. I honestly wish there was more of this in the game. The game is sadly only a couple of hours long, and the platforming, while inoffensive, just really won't end up being that enjoyable to platforming enthusiasts, and honestly gets a bit repetitive as you're kind of going through the same motions all throughout the game. From the technical side of things, thankfully I didn't run into any major issues, glitching, crashing, or slowdown of any sort. Scrat'S Nutty Adventure is available on the PlayStation 4 for $39.99, and it does feature a Platinum Trophy. The game is also available on the Nintendo Switch, PC, and Xbox One. Overall, I have to admit, I like Scrat'S Nutty Adventure for what it is. It's a mundane platformer that would have felt right at home on the PlayStation 2, and while it doesn't provide a lot of thrilling gameplay, it's a nice title for some novice or younger gamers that like Ice Age and don't really want something that's going to be overly challenging. And at the price it currently is, it's a bit hard to recommend. With everything said, I'm going to be giving Scrat'S Nutty Adventure a 6 out of 10. That's going to wrap up this review though. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.